Good day. Here's where I'm at. I figured out the formulas and the math and the build to get your waves exactly equal on each side with alternating current. So I'm going to use transformers. Now, this is doing 8 phases, 8 steps now with my circuit. And it's creating waves. Now, how this works is each phase is feeding an individual transformer, and there needs to be 8 transformers. There can only be 4. There needs to be 8. There can only be 2. Now, the explanation why. When the magnetic field is shrinking instead of growing, it sends the induction the other direction, right? So when a magnetic field grows, it sends current, it inducts current one way, and when the magnetic field shrinks, it sends current the other way. Okay, so this is growing and shrinking. Okay. Now, when it's shrinking, it's sending it back towards the positive into the resistor rig. Okay? Now, you don't want that return current to have to go through all the resistance, or else it drops too much voltage and it has nothing left. It just peters out, it changes it all into heat, and then it has nothing left to reuse. Okay, so this is why you need all 8, because look closely at the blue, at the top of the blue. When the blue is at peak, it starts coming down, and exactly as it's coming down, exactly as the magnetic field of the first one is lowering, the second one, which is yellow, is raising. Okay, exactly at the same time. Because when this starts sending current back, it needs something to do with it. And it wants to come back into the circuit. I verified that before. So it comes back into the circuit, and then what does it do? It feeds the one that's growing. Now, how are we avoiding all the resistance? Because this, let's say this electromagnet is hooked up to this terminal. This electromagnet, the second, is hooked up to the very next terminal. So there's, actually the very next terminal is up here. So there's only 1/16 of your resistance of your whole rig that the return current has to travel through, which is barely going to drop anything. You're talking like 1 ohm, roughly 1.5 ohm, under 2 ohm. Okay, now to get this wave like this, which I've never seen anyone accomplish before, is a little task. The resistance values have to be balanced to your transformer resistance. So you have to ohm out your coils that you're going to use, get your resistance, and they all have to be the exact same. And your resistance value of the entire resistor, and you got to divide it and understand how many ohms each leg have to be with how this works. And then it is possible to get proper waves that are alternating current and go in equal steps the entire way. And then they start overlapping. 1, 2, 3, 4, like virtual rotation. Now you have 2 options here. You could set up a stator coil with electromagnets around it inside an armature like a motor, and you could create virtual rotation with this, because that is virtual rotation. Or you could use transformers, which do the same thing, and just take each individual phase and get 8 phase output, then rectify each phase. Now, I haven't wrapped my head around on the other 8. Are there going to be 2 that I could power series together? I don't know yet. I'm going to have to get to that point. But anyway, I got 4 hooked up here. They're outputting energy. Now, the downfall is it's a little wasteful, because in order to take that lens and put it back into the system, right? To utilize that lens instead of letting it fight you, you have to make a sacrifice. And what's the sacrifice? The resistors. I have to burn half of my energy that I'm inputting in resistance, and only half of the energy that I'm inputting is going into the transformers. But that sacrifice may be worth it if it does what it's supposed to do and beat lens. And it don't matter how much you're really inputting, because it could produce many fold output than input. So it's kind of like a generator where you're using half as strong magnets instead of your real strong ones. But it's not really a good comparison. Anyway, so that's where we're at. I'm currently hooking up my transformers, and I'm going to do some tests to see exactly what happens. Now, I already know when I start taking from one, I start taking from the second, the first power goes up higher. When I take from the third, both of these go higher. When I take to the fourth, both these go higher. And it looks like the inverse square wave is starting to happen in power production when you're taking them. But I haven't hooked it up yet with the other side, so we'll have to see how that goes. But that's the general scheme of things. Now, let's say I only had 2 transformers, not 4, not 8, just 2. One on one side of the rig, one on the other side, like the Clemente Figuera system shows. Right? Now, so these would be 180 degrees out of phase instead of 22.5 degrees out of phase. Okay, so if that was happening, then it would have to go through all the resistance to get back to the second one that's growing, because to create the 2 phases, you're going through the entire resistance. And in this situation, you're not. So this is a little update. Once I get more info and progress, I will update.